Welcome to part 3 of the ESTeem Networking Suite training series, where we're going to take a look at how to actually program the Horizon radios using the ESTeem Network Suite software. All networks start with a simple site layout. For our example, we will actually be using a location that has a master location, a dedicated repeater, and 4 remote sites. Site number 3 and site number 4 will actually use the repeater site to get back to the master site. If it's unclear of which radio of the radios that ESTeem offers that would be best to use in this application, we'll be glad to help you determine that. For this application though, we're going to use our new Horizon 900 MHz radio. Once the correct radio model has been determined, there is some additional information that we will need to complete the programming within the ESTeem network suite. Those are going to be the frequency of operation and the bandwidth required. These may be unknown and may be gathered during a site analysis, or they can be used at default and changed as required as the application dictates. There are actually 2 ways to start a new wireless network. The first would be to connect all the ESTeem radios that you have for the network into a single Ethernet switch, and then you can discover the networks by pressing the Discover Networks button. The next option is to create a new network by pressing the New Network icon. The other 2 buttons are you can load a previously saved network, or if you've already got one on the screen, you can hit View Selected Networks. For example, to give you an idea of what a Discover network looks like, we have it connected into our building network with several wireless systems in operation. So if I press the Discover Networks button, you'll see here that we have multiple networks popping up on the network. Everything from the way it's read is this is the frequency of operation, the next one is the SSID, the next one is the channel of operation within the frequency band, what the bandwidth is for that, and ultimately the number of radios within that given network. What we're going to do for our application, though, is we're actually going to create a new network based upon the serial numbers of the radios that we had in the previous slide. To do this, what I'm going to do is press the New Network button. It's going to ask me what frequency band of the Horizon we're operating again. Again, we're operating the Horizon 900, so we'll select 900 megahertz and press OK. Then it's going to start asking me the details that we had discussed in the previous section. The SSID. What we'll call for our purpose here is we'll just call this our training network. Okay? We have 3 available bandwidths, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz, and 20 megahertz available to us. 5 megahertz is going to give us the best operation in and amongst other wireless systems. 20 megahertz is going to give us the highest throughput, but does require the most bandwidth. 10 megahertz is how the radios are shipped, and it is a good place to start if it's really unknown. The next thing is actually the channel of operation. For our example, going to put it at channel number 6, okay, which is at 917 megahertz. If it's unknown, you can select one channel, and if you run into too much interference, then you can actually you can just move the frequency to the next channel over. We select OK, and what this is going to do is this is going to create a new network on our networks available to us. We'll see here it's a training network, and it has 0 radios into it. So what we'll do is either we can double-click on that network or press View Selected Network. Both of them do the same thing. Because we have a fairly large network, we're going to actually expand the size of the network out so that we can start adding radios into the system. There are 2 types of radios that we can add to this network depending upon whether we know the serial number of the radios that we're going to use, or if we're doing this before we receive the radios from the factory. Those 2 different types of radios are either a new radio or a dummy radio. A dummy radio is just a placeholder that allows you to then change the serial number or convert from a dummy radio into an actual radio. We know the serial numbers of the radios that we're going to use in our example, so we can press New Radio. Once we do this, it says Create Radio, and the first one that we're going to do is we're going to enter in the master radio, which has a serial number of Z-23503. Once we enter that and select OK, it's going to add a radio to the screen. As you can see, we can move this radio anywhere on the screen, and what we're going to do is approximate the network design as we had in the previous layout. We'll continue adding remotes this way until we have all 5 radios on the board. The next radio we're going to add is the repeater site. We're going to do this a little bit different. What we're going to do is go select Radio, New Radio. It's not necessary that we enter the entire serial number. Really all that's necessary is the numbers themselves. So the serial number for the repeater is Z23502. So we're just going to type in the numbers 23502, press OK, and it will then make a new radio much in the same way. And as I mentioned, what we're going to do is we'll continue this for all the remote sites until we have them all on the board. Now I've continued to add new radios until I have a total of 6 radios on the screen, as we see laid out here. What we can then do is we can move the radios around to approximate the layout that we have on our site diagram. It makes someone that's not familiar with the network much easier to understand how they lay out in real time. So the last things that we need to do here is we actually need to change the name on each one of these given radios, which we see listed here as radio ID, so that they will show up that way not only in the main screen of the radio itself, but any of the diagnostic tools will show the modem ID as a remote location so that you can identify it for much easier troubleshooting. To change the modem ID, it's very simple. As you double-click on a given radio, we're not going to change the mode of operation, but if you select Next, the first thing that'll pop up is the modem ID. So we can just simply type in here Master and hit Commit. Okay? Then it changes the name of that location to Master. So we continue on. This is our repeater. We'll change the name to Repeater. Hit Commit. And I'll continue around to the remote locations and name each one of them so that it matches our site diagram. Now that all sites have been renamed to Master, Repeater, Remote 1, 2, 3, and 4, we can simply create the wireless links to it, which used to be one of the most complicated processes, now becomes very, very simple. To create a wireless link, say from the master to remote number 1, we simply start with the first box and draw it to the second box. There is no difference in communication between one box to the next. All it does is it'll change the box depending upon the location just so it's easier to read. So we'll continue adding these links from the master to remote number 2, adding the link from the master to the repeater. We simply drag a link between those two, and then finally from the repeater site out to addresses 3 and addresses 4. We have now laid out and programmed each one of these radios for each one of those locations. Once all links have been determined, there are 2 ways that we can send this information to program these radios. The first would be if they are all connected into a single switch, we can simply go up to Radio and send the settings to all the radios on the network. The next option is we can actually send to one specific radio by clicking the radio itself. It'll highlight with a black border, and then we can do a right mouse click and send the settings to the selected radio. If we want to send it to just say 2 radios, we can hold down the Shift key, select 2 radios, and then again go back up to Radio and send to selected radios. Another option is if you do not have multiple radios or a switch available to you, you can actually program each of these radios one at a time. Simply plug in the master radio into your computer and then simply download that program to that one radio. It will complete, then plug in the next radio until all 6 radios in the network have been done. Once this is done, each one of these radios will then have its programming to work in the configuration as we see it. And what we can do is save all of these configurations within one file by simply going up and selecting File, Save Network, and then we can give it a network name. Again, what we're going to do is we're going to call this our training network and select Save. So if we ever need to find out what program is in one specific radio or any radio or add a radio, we can then bring that network up as a saved file. That completes our instructions on how to program the radio using the ESTeem Networking Suite software. Hopefully this was informative, and if you have any other questions, of course you can reach out to us either through our website address or you can call support at 509-735-9092. Part 4 of this section will cover the more advanced features of the ESTeem Networking Suite software. We hope to see you then.